Good afternoon, welcome to the black hole. Today we'll be discussing about the Cold War and sports. I'd like to thank the black hole for giving me this opportunity to discuss this topic, and I especially like to thank Naya for helping me, although he cannot join us today, but helped a lot. Helped us a lot in bringing it here on the platform. So I'd like to thank him for all his efforts. Now, before starting, I have prepared a presentation for this topic, but I will first have to introduce the topic itself, like how it came into being and all that. So normally we associate sports as apolitical, like it has little to nothing to do with politics. Like politics is a separate thing, sports is a separate thing. But now, if you watch it closely, in any sporting event, be it cricket, be it football, any sports, you will see that perhaps on screen or on news reports, it's that way. But if you look at the deeper picture also, it's not, some politics do get meddled in. So we will be looking into that, especially from the Cold War time, the Cold War, which was basically a geopolitical conflict between the United States of America and the Soviet Union. And the respective allies. Now we should start the introduction. Alright, first we have to, the Cold War is a term commonly used to refer to a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and the respective allies, the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc. The term Cold War was used because there was no large-scale fighting directly. Basically, if I have to, one would say that, to keep it short, the Cold War is basically a fight between two nations or such entities without actually sending a foot soldier. They fight it out in different ways. Not necessarily you have to fight with guns or missiles, etc. If not directly, at least proxy wars. Like basically, a proxy war is fighting for a country fighting for another country or such. The conflict was based around the ideological and geopolitical struggle for global influence by these two superpowers, following the temporary alliance and victory against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan in 1940. This is, I got this definition from Wikipedia on 13th of January 2023. But as you all know, that Wikipedia is subject to change at most of the time. So for now, it's this way. Who knows? Next time you check on Wikipedia, it might have changed. Now, Kristen May, who wrote for clearinghouseforsport.gov.australia, she defined sports as a human activity involving physical exertion and skill as a primary focus of the activity, with elements of competition or social participation, where rules and patterns of behavior governing the activity exist formally through the organization is generally recognized as a sport. So we have now defined both what is the Cold War and what is sport, what we are discussing. So in this presentation, we will see how the Cold War played a role in sports that is usually apolitical. Now, I would like to first start off from 1956, December 1950, the 1956 Blood and Water match. It basically happened in 1956 Melbourne Olympics. For those wondering about 6th December, normally in the Southern Hemisphere, it's it is summer during this time of the year. So in 1956 Melbourne Olympics, the Hungarian and the Soviet water polo team made it to the semi-finals. However, in the early 1956, the Soviet Union repressed a student demonstration in Budapest, creating an extremely tense relationship between the two countries, according to Olympics blast from the past, Blood and Water. This caused resentment, which came to display in the semi-finals. So basically, what happened was that before this happened, basically what happened was there was a protest against. The Hungarian people were basically protesting against Matyas Rakoshi's regime, and Moscow replaced him. Moscow replaced him with Erno Gero. He wasn't that popular. So on 23rd of October 1956, students took to the streets and were supported by the workers and the Hungarian army. As riots spread, the Soviets agreed to the formation of a new government under the leadership of more liberal Imre Nagy, a popular communist leader. So on 28th of October, Soviet tanks began to withdraw, and many Hungarians were now confident of the American support. This led to Imre Nagy was a bit more they were a bit not that severe he was a communist, but a bit more not a little bit more softer in terms of approaching to the West compared to the hardline. So he passed certain reforms, which included free elections to choose a democratic government, impartial legal system to ensure free trials, total withdrawal of Soviet troops from Hungary, farmers to be allowed private ownership of their land instead of it being state-owned, and Hungary to leave Warsaw Pact and declare neutrality in the Cold War. So basically, when Imre Nagy announced that they will leave the Warsaw Pact, basically the Warsaw Pact is basically an alliance of countries in Eastern Europe, which just like we have NATO, US and NATO allies, they have Soviets and the Warsaw Pact allies. So basically, when Hungary announced, Imre Nagy intended to withdraw Hungary from Warsaw Pact, the Soviets could not allow it. So allow it. Why they couldn't was because it would leave. The Soviets were of the view that if Hungary left the Warsaw Pact, then it will leave a gap in the Soviet Union's buffer zone with Western Europe. And that time Nikita Khrushchev's priority was Soviet security. So, as a response, on 4th of November 1956, 6,000 Soviet tanks crossed the Hungarian border. And then there were a lot of street fighting and all that. And the student demonstration was repressed. Now, coming back to here, where I got this, all this is from BBC Bite Size, GCSE revision. So basically what happened was now resentment was developed within the Hungarian water polo team. Actually, they were even there practicing at home when this whole happened. So the resentment was developed against the Soviets. So when they reached the semi-finals with the Soviet Union, then the Hungarian team led the game with a win of 4-0. They won 4 out of 0. Water polo is basically like you have given a ball, you have to reach it to a goal. Something like football, but on water. Something like that. So, as a way of expressing, letting down the resentment and all that, they initiated certain fights, punches, and verbal fights. More against the Soviets, and the Soviets even responded back to this aggression, which led to some being injured. Like here you see in this photo, this is Ervin Zador. Ervin Zador, he's one of the well-known water polo players from Hungary. He was injured by a Soviet player, by Valentin Parakov. So here you can see that despite there should be, what happened in Hungary was a continent away from Australia, but it happened right in the Olympics. Eventually they won from the Soviets, and then they went on to win a gold medal against Yugoslavia in the finals, and before defecting to the West, like. The US who were actually in the match, there were some US supporters, US Americans who were present. So they were there to assist them to defect to the West. And this is not the first time such defections happen. Actually, There were even more defections, which happened throughout the Cold War. Some prominently, like Martina Navratilova, she's a tennis player from Czechoslovakia. She's wrote in her autobiography that before leaving Czechoslovakia, she got help from FBI to move to the United States. Actually, she was basically dissatisfied with the payment and all that. Like the state will take roughly most of her income. So, and then Nadia Comaneci, when the Romanian Revolution happened in 1989, so she joined a team of other people who eventually crossed the Romanian border into Hungary and from Austria and took a flight to the US, like defection. So this is not the first time, and actually it's still ongoing even post Cold War. Like there was this Chinese player where I will not into the detail. I mean, I'm having a hard time remembering the details. It was between USA and China regarding
skater,
half-pipe skater. There's some issues like she's Chinese but playing for the US. Now the Chinese government want to induct her into their team. So it happens. Now I should proceed with the next slide. Next we have 1971 ping pong diplomacy. So yes, I said it's a bit too fast forward, but anyways. So in 1971, it was the start of détente, which is a French word for relaxation period, which is normalization of relations between US and the Soviet Union. Like USA and Soviet Union, started to cool down, started warming up their relationship. And at the same time, China fell out with the USSR in an event known as the Sino-Soviet split. China, not wanting to be isolated, seek to warm relations with the USA as a deterrent from the Soviets. So basically, what happened was that relations between the Soviet Union and China deteriorated after 1956. Because basically Nikita Khrushchev started his de-Stalinization program and called for a peaceful coexistence with the West. Like we can peacefully coexist with the West. So according to the Chinese did not approve of this policy because according to them it was against the ideas of Lenin, the leader of the 1970 Russian Communist Revolution. And so the Chinese accused the Russians of revisionism, revising or reinterpreting the teachings of Marx and Lenin to suit their own needs. They were angry at Khrushchev's soft line towards the USA. In retaliation, the Russians reduced the economic aid to China. This is in page 245 from Norman Low's Mastering the Modern World History, 5th edition. So they had to. So what happened later was later an opportunity came in 1971 when the Chinese table tennis players met up with Glenn Coben in Nagoya, Japan, and exchanged gifts with each other. So what happened was that in 1971 there was a World Table Tennis Championship in Nagoya, Japan. So Glenn Coben, he was 19 years old, kind of hopped on a shuttle bus, probably accidentally, shuttle bus carrying the rest of the Chinese national team. So most of the Chinese players were a bit skeptical of this, why is there an American sitting in a bus full of Chinese? But then Zhuang Zedong, the team's greatest player, stepped forward to shake Coben's hand and speak to him through an interpreter. He presented the teenager with a gift, a silk scene picture of China's Huangshan Mountains. Like you can see in this picture, this is the gift he got. And Coben, he self-described hippie. The hippie movement was going in the US that time. Returned the gesture the following day by giving Zhuang a T-shirt embossed with the peace symbol and the Beatles lyric "Let It Be." Photographers caught the incident on film, and the unexpected goodwill between the US and China teams soon became the talk of the tournament. Actually, the Chinese team were actually instructed not to interact with people from the other side of the Iron like not to interact with US or such allies, but when Chairman Mao Zedong learned about what happened, then he took it as a political opportunity. He's even saying that Zhang Zedong is not just a good table tennis player, he observed, he's a good diplomat as well. A few days later, as the US team was preparing to leave Nagoya, Mao Zedong, shocking the globe, invited them to make an all-paid, expenses-paid visit to China. After checking with the embassy, the American players accepted. So basically, later, what happened was that that American team, table tennis team, for the first time came to China. They even had exhibition matches. They even met with Mao Zedong in the Great Hall of People and all that. And this visit was, you can see here, they even had, these are two pictures from the, and this one from the exhibition matches which happened there. So what happened was visit was successful. Visit was successful, and even China sent their team to the USA for a 8-city tour. And the very next year, 1972, President Richard Nixon paid a visit to China and established relations with them. Well, basically, this point was also not sometimes sports is not necessarily like for the negative thing, but in fact it can happen in positive. Like here, the sport is helping in improving the relations between two countries. So President Richard Nixon visited China, established relations with them. Pakistan also played a role by helping facilitating this, facilitating them, and all that. I should move on. Next, we have Robert Fischer vs. Boris Spassky chess match, which went from 11th July 1972 to 31st of August 1972. So basically, in 1972, Reykjavik was hosting the World Chess Championship. Speaking of World Chess Championship, right now, as I am giving this, delivering this topic, speaking on this topic, there's a new World Chess Championship being decided in Astana, Kazakhstan, between Ian Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren. Right now, Game 4 is ongoing right now. So here, they're basically contesting for the world champion title. Right? Basically, the competition was between the current world champion Boris Spassky from the Soviet Union and Robert Fischer from the United States of America. The match was called the match of the century. It was also a Cold War on the chessboard, as Robert was to break the 24-year monopoly of the Soviets. So basically, for 24 years, until 1972, the Soviet Union had the monopoly over the chess world. Like they held on this title of world champion for past 24 years, which is a very long time. So USA was very determined to break this and break this. It was like a Cold War on the chessboard. So basically, this was supposed to be after much press. Okay, Robert Fischer was to go and play there, and initially he wasn't. Okay, he initially had some issues before joining the competition. Like there were certain demands he put forward. He complained that this, Robert Fischer. Before every other match, he has some issues with the matches out there. So his issue was like the payment was the prize money was too loose. His main issue was, and And he wasn't even interested. I mean, he wasn't even keen on going there. He didn't even show up on the opening ceremony, which was happened on 1st of July. So, so many persuasion was happening. Persuasion was happening. Even Henry Kissinger, the U.S. National Security Advisor, even telephoned and requesting like, go and please compete against Boris Spassky. So after British investment banker Jim Slater agreed, like, okay, I will I will contribute to the increase in price. Then finally, that Robert Fisher agreed to, and he also made a demand that this chessboard has to be changed. Like, it should be this Stoughton chess set from Jacques of London, which is now these days the FIDE's standard chessboard to play a game. So then did he finally agree to play against Boris Spassky. Now, the match was supposed to be played best of 24 matches. Like, there were 24 matches they had to play. Though there were some first. I will explain this process later. There were best of 24 matches. Now, these days, what's going on in Astana, Kazakhstan, like I just mentioned, it is best of 14 matches. But back then, this was 24 matches, and whoever reaches 24 and a half points first wins the championship. And if there's a tie, the defending champion will retain the title. Now these days there'll be a blitz match played as in case a tie happens. The match was anyways, I will not enter the further details. Nearly one. Okay. So yes, actually, the first time to discuss. So basically, what happened was when the first match happened, he came 9 minutes. First was like he came late by 9 minutes. Robert Fisher has a tendency to come late at every match. Comes very late at whatever matches happen. He comes very late. In this first match, he came late by 9 minutes. 9 minutes. Okay. The second match was. Robert Fisher made further demands on the organizers, including that all cameras be removed. No. He made a demand that basically all cameras be removed. When they said, no, we will not be removing the cameras, he refused to appear for Game 2. So Game 2 was automatically a win for Boris Spassky. And actually his appeal was rejected. Rejected. And it's all that, but I will not enter all of them. Eventually... Oh yes, and even if Robert Fisher was about to leave Iceland until he was persuaded by William Lombardi, and again another phone call from Henry Kissinger, like, please don't leave Iceland, please compete with Boris Spassky. So that finally he decided to come for the play. Later, Robert won the championship by 12.5 to 8.5, replacing Boris Spassky as world champion, being the first American born to do so, and breaking the 24-year monopoly of the Soviets. So when Robert Fisher won the championship in replacing Boris Spassky, it was big news in America that they finally had broken the record, the monopoly, and now they were the leading in chess. And he was the first American born to do so. Actually, there was another American who won some older World Chess Championship, but that time he was a Swiss citizen who got naturalized, got the citizenship of US. He was the first American born to do so. So it was a lot of tension involved in this World Chess Championship. It was called Match of the Century for a reason. And yep, I think that's all I have to say from here. Now we come to the 1972 Munich Olympics. A lot has happened in 1972 Munich Olympics. A lot has happened, but for now I will be discussing two events from it: the Munich massacre and the USA versus USSR basketball match. And we will see how the Cold War played a role. Now, the Munich massacre, the 5th September 1972. Okay. Although this is between Palestine and Israel, but how is it related to Cold War was whenever you study the Cold War, you will eventually end up in this Palestinian versus Arab, this Israeli conflict, territorial, this conflict. So what happened was, according to history.com editors, massacre begins at Munich Olympics, history.com. During the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, in the early morning of September 5, a group of Palestinian terrorists stormed the Olympic Village apartment of the Israeli athletes, killing 2 and taking 9 other hostage. Now this was a hostage crisis. The terrorists were part of a group known as Black September. In return for the release of the hostages, they demanded that Israel releases over 230 Arab prisoners being held in Israeli jails and 2 German terrorists. Okay. I like to make certain. I would like to clarify certain things, but here is they use the word terrorist. But if I had to give my if I had to say this, if I were the one speaking here, I will use the term militant. Basically, the difference between a militant and a terrorist is okay. A militant. I'd like to first clear out. Militant is a person who is involved in an armed conflict with a specific goal. A specific goal. A person who is involved in an armed conflict with a specific goal is a militant. Now, wherever their goal is, a goal can include political movement, social movement, cultural movement, and all that. But actually, we don't have a fixed term for militant, but this is how I see what a militant is. Now, whether their goal is of good cause or bad cause, that is a separate debate, but that's a militant. Meanwhile, a terrorist is a person please excuse my handwriting who is involved in spreading terror by any means. Goals necessary. Please, and also excuse my spelling mistake. So a militant is a person who is involved in an armed conflict with a specific goal. A terrorist is a person who is involved in spreading terror by any means. Now, by spreading terror, you can be like through coercion, to hostage crisis, to bomb blast, terrorist attacks. Like a militant. These shootings and all that. Yes, and etc. Now, example of a militant militants I can give example is like these Baloch militants you see in Balochistan. Okay, whether what they are doing is right or wrong is a separate debate, but basically they have a goal. They have a goal, like they want to, like some want independence for Balochistan, some want improvement for Balochistan and all that, and they carrying out militants, carrying out an armed conflict. So this is one example of militants. While terrorist is a person who's involved in, like they just spread terror. They don't need to even have a goal. They just have to spread terror. One local example I can give is long time ago in Islamabad, there was the Egyptian embassy exploded. So that was why is an act of terrorism, because it just exploded. We don't know why it happened. Even if there was a motive, it's quite unclear. And another latest one for who have seen it is like we had back in 2013 we had a Islamabad hostage crisis. I think you all remember, in the blue area some Afghan by the name of Mohammed Sikandar. He just came out of his car, he just pulled off an AK-47 and just held the blue area in hostage. So that's your local examples of as a militant and a militant and terrorist. So over here, I think the best, if I had to be neutral here, or the best thing I will say is, for here it is a militant carrying out an act of terrorism. Okay, I will use the term here. The Palestinian militants were carrying out an act of terrorism. Like the spring. Why I say an act of terrorism is because, as we mentioned before, this is the Olympics is supposed to be a neutral thing, like apolitical, and it's supposed to be peaceful and all that. But still, they carried it out, created terror, not just for the Israeli team who were there, but for all other teams. Okay, so was basically what happened, how this whole happened was basically when Munich got the chance to host the Olympics. So what happened was the Olympic Committee wanted, in Munich, they wanted to bring a different, they should not, basically the last time Munich Olympics was hosted was in 1936, which that time Nazi Germany was there, Adolf Hitler was there, and some of you, if any of you have seen this video by Leni Reschentopf, Triumph of the Will, Triumph of the Will, you will see that a lot of, it was a whole military parade, a lot of Nazi symbolism, and a lot of military stuff and all this. So they wanted to, they deliberately reduced the security, they do not want when people were they want to show to the world that we have moved on from this whole Nazism and all that. We have moved on. So that's why little security was put over there. But what happened was that the hostage crisis happened. What happened was basically the Black September group, which is a militant offshoot of the Palestinian group Fatah, scaled the fence surrounding the Olympic village in Munich. Disguised as athletes and using stolen keys, they forced their way into the quarters of Israeli Olympic team at 31 Kornelstrasse. As they attempted to enter apartment 1, they were confronted by Josef Gutfreund, a wrestling referee, and Moshe Weinberg, a wrestling coach. So there were some conflicts and all that, and all that. There was a whole hostage situation. It's even it was all even on footages and all that. It was on the news, and later they made a demand, like while this whole hostage crisis was going on. This is the demands they have made. 230 Arab, actually by Arab they actually meant they're supposed to be writing here Palestinian terrorists. That they just demanded for Palestinians, and two German militants, terrorist militants. I mean, they say terrorists, I say militant, which is of Avery, Andreas Bader and Ulrike Meinhof of Red Army faction from German prisons. And they also made an additional demand that they want a plane to fly away from the country. So, while negotiations were going on, the Olympic Games were still ongoing while the hostage crisis was going on. Then, after certain negotiation, the West German police agreed that they will take them to the airport. So they were taken to the Fürsten Fedelberg airbase, 25 kilometers west of the Olympic Village, where the police were lying in ambush. Okay, what the German police was aiming was that actually what happened, why the police had to do all the work was basically the German army had better training and equipment for such a mission, but under the West Germany's post-war constitution, the armed forces were forbidden from aiding the civilian police, civilian police. So basically, the German police, the Western Germany police had to do the work of that, and the problem they had was they were armed with assault rifles rather than sniper rifles, and the weapons had neither long-range scopes nor night vision capability. Now the aim was now what was originally planned was that there will be a plane ready for them, and there will be air staff in it, but the air staff are basically the police in disguise. So basically what they plan to do was when they will get in, when these terrorists, I mean not terrorists, why do I keep mixing up these two terms? The militants will board in the plane and all that. They will subdue the terrorists. I mean not the terrorists, I mean militants. Yeah, please excuse my sources are conflicting. And all that. But then what happened was the police unanimously chose to abandon the post. They chose to abandon the post. They decided, no, we can't do this. So while this was going on, then there were already other police forces there at the airport waiting to carry, like if they have to carry out a shootout, they will they are like a carry out. I mean, they will carry it. I mean, they posted there. But the thing was, another issue they had was they lacked radios to communicate with each other. So like with the commander. So like basically there was also a communication trouble. So what happened was when two of the militants saw the aircraft was empty and they became aware that this whole thing was set up, they shut up to their comrades that this is whole setup and everything, and then a gun battle ensued. And 7 militants were killed, and so was 1 police officer. The helicopter flight crews ran for cover, but the Israeli athletes were bound together and trapped. After the initial full slide, which the militants also shot out the floodlights and all eliminated tarmac, the scene settled into a tense stalemate punctured by the sporadic gunfire. And what happened while this whole shootout happened, pretty much all the Israeli team were gone, killed. Now, they were all killed in this scene, I think. I mean, you can read further about what happened in the Munich massacre at Encyclopedia Britannica. They wrote a whole article, and there's history.com editor. And please keep cross-checking your sources. And then what happened at the end was there was the Olympic Games were suspended for 24 hours in tribute to the murdered athletes. But as the International Olympic Committee president at the time said that the games will still go on, which received some condemnation, but the games went on after that. So another example of the cool, basically this Munich Olympics, there wasn't of course no militancy was expected and all that, but it just happened. It just happened. Now, what the activities of Black September did, well, I don't know. I mean, what they did was right or wrong. That's a separate debate. But this is what happened. And then, as a result of all this, back in Israel, the Prime Minister Golda Meir launched the Operation Wrath of God, which is supposed to hunt down. I mean, like there were some. There were 7 killed there, but there were in fact 9 in total. 9, 10 in total. So they were to hunt down the 3 others, and it happened, and all that. Like a whole operation was launched. I think I should move to the next slide. Okay, next we have USA versus USSR basketball match in September 1972. Yes, but I said a lot has happened in the Olympics. Another, beside the Munich massacre, you have another this. And this is a bit it is controversial, at the same time a bit complicated. So I will have a hard time explaining all of you how it happened, but I will try my best to explain it as much as I can. So basically, on 9th September 1972, 2 days before the Olympics was to conclude, there was a final basketball match between the USA and the USSR. The game ended with the Soviets winning by 51-50 against the USA. The last few seconds of the game were subject of controversy attributed to the Cold War. The USA team refused to take home the silver medals even to this day, aware of the view that they were the rightful winners. Okay, so what happened was it's a bit complicated, but I will try my best to explain it. So basically, maybe if I use the board, maybe I might provide an explanation. So what happened was that I have wrote a lot. Okay, what happened was okay. Okay. The horn sounded as okay. So as the Soviets inbound did okay, where was it? Okay, as the ball was okay, as Colin player Colin made his second shot, the Soviet yes, that's the amount of time left. So basically, there were 3 seconds. Okay, 3 seconds left. So what happened was that eventually the game almost went over. The game went almost over. So basically, what happened was then later the Soviet assistant coach quickly ran to the score table and said that they called for a timeout while this whole thing happened. Now the Brazilian referee, Renato Rigetto, he said that the ball has gone already into the hoop basket, so you cannot call out for a timeout. But then, what happened was that then the FIBA Secretary General Renato William Jones he came and said that, and after there was lots of discussion going on, and there the Soviet timer should not have been granted, and the game should resume with 1 second remaining. Basically, there was 1 second left. 1 second left. Despite having no jurisdiction to do so, like the FIBA Secretary General, he was there at basketball, he was watching the match, but he had no say to it. But he came to the score table and said that, and he overruled the official and indicated the clock should be reset to 3 seconds, and the game resumed from that point. The player took to the court again, with the Soviets impounded quickly but missing on the desperation attempt as a whole sounded, and the Americans stormed the court to celebrate the victory. Now it again became 0. And instead reading 50 microseconds of remaining, as the whole was an attempt by official schools to get the referee's attention. Okay, what happened was that the referee administering the inbounds play did not see the game clock change. Basically, they did not change despite they were told to reset 3 seconds, they did not do so. So basically 3 seconds were played without actually resetting the clock. So more discussions followed, and the Soviets were given another chance to inbound. Like basically now they have reset the clock back to 3 seconds. Against resetting back to 3 seconds, 3 seconds, and also, I mean, and then okay, what happened? The Belov, I mean, Alexander Belov, he then scored the goal, making it 50-51. Okay, so there was a whole controversy about basically the controversy was like the last seconds were granted. Basically, after the whole commotion, basically 6 seconds were given to the Soviets to score a goal, which is it is actually sufficient enough for a goal to take place in 6 seconds. So there was a whole controversy. Now the Americans protested and all that. Americans protested that what the Brazilian referee said was actually correct. They scored a goal, so no timeout should have been granted, but. All that. No, they did not want to take. So they were basically second. They were to be silver medalists, but the US still did not accept it. That they lost. You can see the disappointment here in this middle picture, but. They did not, of course, they did not join the podium. They were not. They refused to accept the medal, and to this day, they still haven't accepted the medal, or accepted the fact that they became second. So there was a whole competition, even. But I mean, there was a whole not competition, a whole protest and all that, and. Okay, and actually, after the Olympics. The US actually filed an appeal to the Federal FIBA, International Amateur Football Basketball Federation. Okay, the controversy continues from there as well. So basically, it was a 5-member jury the appeal was submitted to. And the one presiding the jury was a Hungarian, which was part of the Warsaw Pact. So, yes. So, after going through the whole thing, the jury voted 3 in favor of the Soviets and 2 in favor of the US. So, basically, the appeal was rejected. The CIA, I mean, the USA did not accept, they could not accept it. Actually, even the CIA also had to review this matter. Even CIA had to review this matter. And they accused this whole thing as a communist conspiracy. Like the communists were, involved, I mean, the Soviets were involved in this whole, what happened, the whole fiasco. The Soviets were involved in the whole thing. And then later the US appealed to the International Olympic Committee. The International Olympic Committee, after hearing the appeal, said that yes, United States, you have a point, but that is not in our jurisdiction. That is but that is for the FIBA to decide. Because FIBA has already given a decision that they are sticking with the Soviets, so they no, they will not accept the second medal. They didn't even show up in the podium over here, and to this day they still haven't accepted. Yes. So yes. You see the whole communism conspiracy and all that. Oh yes, another interesting thing what happened was while this whole thingy was going on, the whole commotion was going on, the Soviets quickly substituted one of the players with a veteran Soviet player by the name of Ivan Edeshiko. Edeshiko, he was a professional. Actually, in the Olympic rules, even I think today, professionals cannot enter to the Soviet. I mean, you cannot enter the Olympics. But the Soviets managed to bypass it by saying like, he's a worker. His profession is of a worker. His profession is of a soldier. So please allow them. And they're just amateurs, which in fact they were professional basketball players. So it was a whole thing, which kind of gave an advantage to the Soviets. Like, yep. Next slide. Now we come to the Olympic boycotts. We discussed about Olympic boycotts for some time. So basically, there were two Olympics which happened in the Cold War, which was boycotted by the different blocs. The 1980 Olympics and the 1984 Olympics. The 1981 happened in Moscow, and the 1984 happened in Los Angeles. So sometimes the blocs go as far as boycotting the games as a protest. This has occurred during the 1980 Moscow Olympics, where USA and the Allies, with few exceptions, boycotted the games in protest against the Soviet invasion. There have been discussion. I mean, they saw it as an invasion, but basically what happened was there was a commotion going on in Afghanistan, and the Afghan government requested the Soviets for their assistance. So the Soviet troops were moved in to calm down the commotion in Afghanistan. But as we are taught, it was an invasion. Last year, in 1979. So you can see this map to the first one. This is the countries which boycotted the Moscow Olympics, which included Canada, USA, Norway, West Germany, Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, some China, Japan, and all that. They boycotted the not Moscow Olympics. Moscow Olympics. Okay, so when the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics took place, the Soviet Union and their allies, in retaliation, okay, you have boycotted our Olympics, okay, we will not come to your Olympics. So the Soviet Union and the allies boycotted the games in response to the previous game boycott. I remember my good comrade Hussain Ghazi, he did say when he gave his talk that Olympics is that type of family gathering where there's always that one relative who says that I have a fight with this person, so I'm not coming. If I recall. So, yes, so there was boycotts from there. Okay, if you look at the map closely, what I find interesting is that okay, you can see how despite UK, France, Germany, Italy, and all these European countries, except for West Germany, they're all allies of the US. They still participated in the Moscow Olympics. Same with Australia and New Zealand and India. And all that. And then, while in the next one, we can see that Russia, Afghanistan, basically all the Soviet allied states, they boycotted. What I find interesting is if you look closely here, where Iran is, Iran boycotted both. I mean, Iran did not participate in either of the Olympics. Like, it just went non-aligned. Like, I'm not going to his I'm not going to Moscow Olympics, nor I'm going to Los Angeles Olympics. Well, India is a good friend of India at that time was a very good friend of the Soviet Union. Despite that, India went to both to the Moscow Olympics and also went to the Los Angeles Olympics. Pakistan, we boycotted the Moscow Olympics because being good friends of America, we had to show solidarity. But we also joined the Los Angeles Olympics, where we got a gold medal in the hockey. And all that. So yes, some go as far as boycotting the Olympic Games. Next, we have cricket diplomacy. I decided to give some local touch to this presentation, the cricket diplomacy. Although Pakistan, we are playing a role in the Cold War, like being US allies, but we also had our own Cold War, which is also still ongoing between Pakistan and India. We are not we are not sending our actual troops to fight against each other, but we do do pretty much what the US and USSR were doing with each other. And we were backed by the US. India was backed by they had Soviet backing. So in cricket, in early 1970, so cricket diplomacy, it happened from 3rd February 1987 to 17 March 1987. That was how long the test match was going on, the test series was going on. So in early 1987, India stationed the troops near the Pakistan border. Okay, some say that, there are a lot of debates on why it happened, but for now, I will not enter it. We will just take the fact that basically India stationed the troops near the border. It was also at the same time a test match between India and Pakistan was happening in Jaipur. General Zia-ul-Haq, in a surprise move, flew to India to watch the match. Rajiv Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India, was the host him. Okay, Zia-ul-Haq showed up to watch the match. Much to Rajiv, not even Rajiv could do anything about it. As they watched the test match between the two countries happening, side by side, negotiations went on to diffuse the tensions. The negotiations happened while they were watching the match, and the negotiations concluded, and India pulled back the troops. Meanwhile, Pakistan won the test match, drawn the first 4 matches by 16 runs in the last match. Yes, and all that. Yep. I think. This helped diffuse the tension. So, yes, it helped diffuse the tension between two countries. And actually, the cricket diplomacy even went on to be used in Pervez Musharraf's regime. And when Zaid Raza Gilani was the Prime Minister of the country back in 2011. He also had, again, cricket diplomacy was used again. So, in a sense, then we started cricket diplomacy. Next slide. Conclusion. After going through this presentation, which I must say this is quite a short presentation, we have observed that all those forces are supposed to be apolitical, yet the Cold War and other political events played a role. The presenter likes to take the audience for the time, and we may begin the Q&A session. That's it. That's the presentation done. I think it's a bit too short, but anyways, any questions? Let's hope I answer most of the questions with ease. Otherwise,
Daniyal, well done.
Thank you.
You have explained it very nicely. I have a couple of questions regarding these slides. One thing, USSR in 1980, you told, when they were boycotted in
Yes, in 1980, the Olympics was boycotted by
for
the
the reason that they invaded Afghanistan
so-called invaded Afghanistan. I still
in an
believe.
attempt.
Yes, yes.
And when in 2001 or 2, when America attacked Afghanistan, and in the following Olympics, what was the response of USSR against Americans' attack on Afghanistan?
That's a very good question. Well, first I'd like to clarify that the Soviet Union ceased to exist, ceased to exist. And actually, when at the time when the USA invaded, when we hopped into Afghanistan, that time the Olympics already happened. The Olympics that time was 2000 Sydney Olympics. The next Olympics wasn't to start until 2004. So we couldn't exactly like what response they could have. There wasn't any particular response from the Russia also. I mean, this whole invasion of Afghanistan by like when America jumped into Afghanistan, it was literally between when the Sydney Olympics finished and when the next 2004 Olympics. I don't remember who was hosting it. At Athens. So yeah, and actually I think in Athens Russia did come. Any further questions?
And one more thing, I was thinking that we teach our children in the schools that go for the sports, because in sports you have some kind of team spirit and some kind of you can say sacrifice for others, to have some soft corner for others, to understand others' point of view and accept their winning point too. But in 1972, I saw that even superpowers of that time, they were fighting like anything for getting the prize or getting the winning. Why is it so? They didn't get this lesson?
Ideally, we all have been taught that it should be just a simple game. It's okay to win, it's okay to lose, and all that. But if you look, but when as you pointed out, what happened in this basketball match, it actually you have to a little bit. I mean, if I understand the U.S. Any loss towards the Soviet Union, they will not accept that. They won't accept any such loss from the Soviet Union. And it's not just in sports. Even when the space race happened, actually when Sputnik was launched to space by the Soviets, in America it was a huge deal. The Soviets got ahead. The Soviets got ahead. So there was this competition between, they made it a whole competition, and the USA. I mean, as far as I have seen the USA, how they've been responding, I don't think they can tolerate. Not all. I mean, most of them can tolerate, but sometimes. They can't tolerate it.
Okay. In your opinion, overall, sports play a positive role in neutralizing the political crisis?
Yes. I'm firmly in belief that the sports can play a role in normalizing relations between the two countries or two states.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any next questions?
Curious, and just I want to ask why the chess player want the cameras to be off and just he won the match.
Actually, that's a very good question. Actually, I don't know what happened. Despite my research, I couldn't figure out why. But if I were in his place, I think why I will demand for a camera to be taken off is because basically it was because what happened in Reykjavik was because it was a match of century, it was a whole Cold War front. It was two superpowers fighting in the chessboard. So it was like a lot of pressure built there.
Simply was it cheating not to be cut on camera?
We don't know, but maybe, I don't know. I don't think he will do it. I mean, no, there was no cheating involved, but like to reduce the pressure on both reduce the pressure. Reduce the pressure. There are millions of eyes watching that match. So like to reduce the pressure like the high expectations placed. So I think that's why he did that. I may be wrong. Any further questions?
Daniyal, don't you think terrorists also have some goal when they are spreading some kind of terrorism, like militants?
For that, yes, there are some terrorists who do have goals, but then there are some terrorists who do have goals. I even wrote in brackets, sometimes they have goals, sometimes they don't, like no goals necessary, but that doesn't rule out the fact that they may have some goals. But when I try to be I try to be like in the middle, like actually for some people he or she is a terrorist. For some people it's a freedom fighter or not. So like to stay neutral, I usually go for militant. That's why over there I wrote militants carrying out an act of terrorism. Like yes, they would be called terrorists, but because I tried to stay neutral, I went militant, carrying out an act of terrorism.
So means perspective changed.
Perspective change. Like,
all right.
Like for example, like we are seeing in Kashmir. In Kashmir, we see like for India, these Kashmiris who are picking up the gun. Okay, I'm not sitting at the UN General Assembly, so I'm not in big trouble. So when they're picking up the gun and all that, so for the Indians, they will see like terrorists, like they are fighting against the authorities and all that, challenging them. But for many Kashmiris, for them, they were like they are fighting for freedom against India. So they were like freedom fighters. Like you see, it's all about perspective. History has a lot to do with perspective. So this neutral term militant I have used here, being all that. So yes, terrorists do have goals, but they do. Yes, Alim.
Okay, Daniyal, just keep the word goal aside for a while and tell us, do the sports affect war or war affects sports?
It can work both ways. It works both ways. One time, I can give you. One time there was a football match in Honduras. One time. Between El Salvador and Honduras, I think it was these two. So what happened was there was a football match going on, and I don't know what happened in the football match, but it caused a war over there. Yes. There was
in fact, a war was stopped because of a football.
Yes. I will come to that. So here, a football match, a sport did cause a war between Honduras and El Salvador. And if I got the teams wrong, I will apologize here. When Nigeria was having a civil war, that time there was another football match where Pele was there. Now what happened was when they heard that Pele will be playing in this football match, both countries, it was a civil going on, so both the factions, both the sides of the factions, they said like, okay, we will have a truce because we want to watch that fight. We want to watch Pele playing. So it works both ways. Some sports cause wars, some causes normalization of relations. Stops. So yeah. That's why we even have a term, sports diplomacy.
Daniyal, why is it so that whether it be a war between Pakistan and India or it be a cricket match, Pakistani people take it as a war?
Well, we have been taught for so many years to be develop hatred. We have been taught to hate India, and I'm not saying that we just been taught. If in India there's the same thing, they also have been taught to hate us. Actually, if you have seen some Pakistan-India matches, you will see a trade of insults between the two countries among the supporters. So that's why when we see these Pakistan versus India match, we take it as a war. Like we have to win from India, and it doesn't matter what position we get. If as long as we beat India, that is more than enough for us. And in India, it's the same. I don't know how it is in India, but I think they have a similar expectations.
So, do you think this is a good thing?
Well, I believe sometimes we should not look everything like a war and all that. I think we should just enjoy the match.
All right.
Which is not going to happen as long as we exist. Any further questions? Or are there any online questions? No online questions? Okay. I think that's all we have.